Okay, thank you for joining us today. We are grateful you're here as always. This is another one of our topics that was suggested by our viewers. We know that there's always interesting career advice, and we believe we have an interesting slate of presenters today to talk about what it's like to work at their company and what they might be looking for when they're going through a stack of resumes for an open position. So always, I'd like to start with our introductions. Today, as always, Jim Viola, our president of HAI, will join us. Earnie Gill, a recruiter from Metro Aviation, has joined us today. We're pleased to have him. We're also pleased that Dennis Martin, director of marketing for Enstrom Helicopter Company, is with us. And Ricardo Dowdy, director of maintenance for Sundance Helicopters in Las Vegas, will join us. We chose this slate of people so that we could try to get a variety of career paths that might be worth discussing. I do need to offer a warning. Just because these people are willing to share their advice does not mean they will guarantee a job for you. If you apply following everything that they've said so far, it does not mean that there isn't a job opening for you. It will still mean that you need to go through the regular process. You'll need to get your licenses just like everybody else. This is just career advice for general purposes. There will always be time at the end of every webinar for questions. We do invite you to use the question module on the side of your control panel. Those questions will provide us with a written response, and we'll try to get to those towards the end of the webinar. There will be a video link that's sent out to everybody afterwards. It will also be available on our website and on YouTube through the HAI page on YouTube. If you did miss anything, if you want to go back and listen again, you're more than welcome. If you would like to share it with your coworkers, other students, anybody else that you feel is interested, we'll make the links available. Jim, I'd now like to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Dan. Thanks for getting these three great professionals to come talk to HAI members and possibly future members of HAI. We try to do these HAI at work webinars. The intent is to, provide a little education. We're a little bit slowed down maybe in the middle of COVID, but the aviation maintenance professionals that are out there today, we're going to give you some good advice today. And we got three different they provide their points of view exactly, what it's like for their companies, what they're looking for, and it help you prepare if you're out ready to move on to another job or you haven't had one yet. But I think you'll find stuff, or you can ask questions that not normally is seen maybe in a job posting, and you can help you better fit into where exactly you want to go as you move on in your career. So this is kind of like maybe an informal interview, where there'll be some good questions asked, and especially if there's something you always wanted to ask an employer, or the area of maintenance you wanted to get into in the vertical flight community, this is some place to do it today. And also hopefully some of the topics will include mentorship, because it's very important to always know that we got to keep to grow both as the pilot and the maintainers of the future of our vertical flight aircraft. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Dan, to kick things off, and I know this is going to be a good one, so thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Now I'd like to invite Earnie Gill from Metro to bring up his camera, please. Ernie, welcome to HAI and our weekly webinar. We are grateful for your attendance today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We're looking forward to it.
Okay, Ernie, tell me about Metro Aviation. What does Metro Aviation do, and maybe a little bit about the history, your locations, things like that.
So Metro Aviation was incorporated back in 1982 as a helicopter charter and flight training and maintenance operation. We entered the air medical operation business in 1983. Today we have air medical transport operations at over 120 bases throughout the United States. We're known throughout the air medical, law enforcement, and other parts of the industry because of the quality of our components and our installations and our maintenance, because we also have here in the building a Part 145 repair station, which also consists of a production shop and a completion center. We're very fortunate in the fact that we also incorporate under that program an NVG shop, an avionics shop, blade shop, and an engine shop. So we pretty much cover the entire gamut. We do completions, not just for aeromedical, not for our own, but we also do it for our competitors and other organizations throughout the country. We actually have contracts in other parts of the world as well. So we complete about 25 to 40 helicopters a year that we send out to do business and take care of people.
Wow, so there are certainly, it sounds like plenty of roles for maintenance personnel within your organization.
Yes, sir. Under our Part 145 repair station, we can actually employ folks who are trying to get into the maintenance profession in aviation without an AMP. Now, here at our headquarters in Shreveport, Louisiana, we have those positions come up rarely, but we do have them. And it's a great tool for us to be able to bring people in who are trying to get into the maintenance field in particular, because they can work under that Part 145 certification. And all of their work is overseen by a certified mechanic, but it allows them to do that hands-on work, get that experience while they're working to get the AMP where they can do it on their own. As I mentioned before, because of all the other shops that we have, we also have a number of different areas in maintenance that folks can go into and specialize in, such as avionics. In the Part 135 operations that we have, the HA operations, as I said before, we operated over 120 bases across the country. Those bases are always staffed by a maintenance person, and then we have a supervisor for each program. What we're looking for in those individuals would be people with an AMP, and they have to have a minimum of 3 years experience, preferably on the airframes that we utilize, but somewhere in aviation is fine. And we've even gone so far as to, as long as you have a mechanical aptitude and have that AMP, even if it's on different airframes, we can bring you in and train you to what we have. We also have a secondary part of our maintenance group out in the field that are called AOG techs. In the HA business and most aviation, AOG, of course, stands for aircraft on the ground. Anytime you have that, that's not a good thing. You're not making money and you're not helping people. So we also have a small contingency of folks who are AOG techs, and they're based normally at their home, assigned to a region. And then whenever there's an AOG event, they're transferred out to those locations immediately to get them back in the air.
Wow, that's a variety right there. So basically, if you are young and single and you don't necessarily care where you work, you could end up at a maybe a remote base somewhere, or if you've got an established family, you would be able to have a good home life with your family.
Yes, sir. As a general rule, it's a great lifestyle. Most of our technician positions are 5 days on, 2 days off. Of course, those can vary depending on heavy maintenance or AOG events, things like that, but it's a very good work-life balance, pretty good pay scale for most folks. And when you come into the operation, there's always room for advancement in our company, as long as you're continually learning. And we also provide a number of training options once you get into the company as well.
That sounds really nice. What kind of qualifications are you looking for somebody from an entry level? If you were looking, I would assume that if somebody wanted to come to work for you, even if it's at one of the remote locations, they always come through your main website for those applications.
Yes, sir. As a general rule, they do, unless they're a referral, of course, which we get a number of those. But as I said before, under the Part 145 operations, if they were wanting to be based here in Shreveport and try to develop their skills until they can get that AMP, they can actually come in without the AMP. If we have a position available, they would apply on our website at metroaviation.com, and then we would put them through the process, bring them into basically an entry-level position, and start training them here at our headquarters. To go out to one of our remote bases, they would have to have, at a minimum, they need to have that AMP certification, and we would like them to have a minimum of 3 years of aviation maintenance experience. We do have a little bit of latitude in that. We can take in different counts of maintenance experience. If they worked in their backyard with their father on cars for a period of time, those are certainly things that we'll take into consideration, and then we can help develop them as we go along. But all of the application process is easily done on metroaviation.com, and all of our jobs are always advertised as well on Indeed and all of the other known entities.
Okay, now you mentioned that somebody could come in the door at Shreveport without a license and eventually work their way into one of the field maintenance positions. If somebody came in the door in the Part 145 and they came in, say, to your NVG shop, would they be able to move to a different shop at some point if they decided they prefer to work in a different area?
Absolutely. If you come into our building in an entry-level position or into a specific shop, such as the MVG shop, you could go in that MVG shop and gain experience there while you're also going to school and learning to get your AMP. During that process, our company is very big on internal promotions, and if you'll just give me a moment of your time, I'll give you one of the greatest success stories in maintenance I can give you as far as Metro Aviation. And I
Please.
just learned it recently about 8 months ago myself, right before we went to HAI in California. So I learned that our director of Part 145 maintenance here in the headquarters building actually started with this company back when he was 18 years old. He got out of high school, wasn't exactly sure where he was going to go, but he had a mechanical aptitude. The owner of the company, Mike Stanberry, knew him, knew his family, and he offered him a job to start mowing the grass. So Sean Bruton is his name. Sean came to us and he started mowing the grass outside for Metro Aviation. And over a period of time, he started going to school because he decided he wanted to be a mechanic. And as he was doing that, as the years went by, he eventually started working inside the building, actually doing janitorial work, and moved from that into the blade shop and eventually got to the engine shop. And as time went on, he continued to learn, train, and get better. And he got promoted all the way from being the person who mowed the grass, and he is now the director of the Part 145 maintenance. So we do have a very robust internal promotion program, and we always want people to excel that way. We believe that people should be able to achieve whatever it is they choose to get to.
Well, it seems like with a progression like that, obviously you must have been providing training at every level. It just continually builds with training for you folks.
Yes, sir. Once somebody is employed with us, naturally, if they're starting an entry-level position, such as in one of our avionics shops or the MVG shop, they're going to get the initial training in that department. If they show an interest and a desire to train elsewhere and they're motivated to do that, then we'll, of course, provide them with as much training as we can. All of our technicians, when they come on board with us, are given a basic indoctrination. It lasts about 6 days, and it's basically our GOM, the way we do business, and it will give them initial training on the airframes that we have if they haven't had it before. As part of our ongoing training, we also send a number of our technicians, as many of the other companies do, to HAI schools. We send them to the Bell schools, the Airbus schools, and those things as we have the slots and the availability, so that they can always expand on their knowledge base and then move from one area to the other pretty easily if that's what they choose to do.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. I'm assuming in your role that you routinely do career fairs, things like that. What advice, what's the one piece of advice that you routinely give to students who are in an AMP program that might want to come to work for you? What should they look for? What additional things should they try to do to make themselves a more viable candidate for you?
That's a great question. I get a lot at many of the events. And one of the issues that I've discovered in this role is that with the maintenance area, it becomes very difficult for students right out of college or out of a new program to try and get into a company like ours because of the requirements we have with the 3 years experience in aviation. So right off the bat, I have learned, and through some networking I've been able to work with some colleges in the local area and actually some across the country where we've had communication like this. And one of the things we've developed is to get with the local airports and actually put advertisements out at the airport. I tell the young people all the time to get business cards made. And I think it's a great investment just to get that business card made once you get that AMP out of school. Take it to your local airport. Introduce yourself to the airport management, go to the users meetings. Those pilots are there and they all need mechanics. And sometimes you get into a small niche of a small company doing a charter service, something like that, who does not have the requirements we have. And they'll allow you to get your feet in the door and start working on those aircraft and working on different airframes. So my biggest advice is to go to your local aviation resources and get with them, a local flight school, a local airport, and try to get your foot in the door and do some kind of aviation technician experience. It may not be specific to what we have, but if you get enough of that, then you can progress to any of the fields that we have in this industry.
I can't imagine more exceptional advice. That's fantastic, Ernie. I appreciate your time right now. We will have you come back up for some Q&As here very shortly, but now if we could have Dennis bring up his camera, and Ernie, we'll see you very shortly.
Thank you.
There we go. Whoop, we had you, Dennis.
How's that?
There we go. Perfect. Gosh, I can't tell you how much we appreciate having you here as well. Having an OEM, somebody who builds helicopters, is not always what somebody necessarily thinks about when they are looking at an A&P license or going into the aircraft maintenance field. Something tells me you guys hire quite a number of aircraft mechanics there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit different environment than what you would expect and what you see at some of the shops. And we have so many opportunities for maintenance technicians, both guys with their AMPs, sometimes with IAs, and people that don't yet have their licenses. And because we do everything here. You know, raw metal comes in the door and a completed helicopter goes out the other end. We're very highly vertically integrated. So we bring in so many different disciplines, gearbox manufacturing, sheet metal work, fiberglass work, avionics, test flying, final assembly, experimental R&D, you know, all these different subsets we do here under this one roof. So it's like I said, it's a very unique environment.
Well, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. Maybe you can back up for me and tell me a little bit about how Enstrom got started and what kind of airframes you're manufacturing today.
Hey,
Sure. So Enstrom was started 1959. We were founded right here in Menominee, Michigan, and we actually haven't moved. So we've been in the same location now for 60 years. And we've been building aircraft. We built our first aircraft in 1965, and we've been in continuous production since then. And we built over 1,300 aircraft, and we're in over 50 countries around the world. So we're certainly not the biggest OEM out there, but we've been around the block a few times. Right now, we build 3 models of aircraft. So we build 2 piston models. They're kind of fraternal twins. They're three-seat turbocharged pistons. And then we build a 5-place turbine helicopter, the 480B. And sell them, like I said, we sell them all over the world, private owners, flight schools, a lot of militaries. So, you know, everything that Sikorsky does and Bell does, we do just on a little bit smaller scale.
Well, in addition to building them, I would assume you folks also provide factory service. Is, you know, the customer sends their aircraft back for overhaul, repair, 400-hour inspections, things like that?
Correct. We have a 145 repair station within the factory, both FAA and EASA certified. And we use that to facilitate overhauls. We do some maintenance for customers. Sometimes we do factory resets. We will use it to do aftermarket modifications to aircraft. If somebody wants a special radio or something that we don't want to put it on the line. Sometimes we'll do accident rebuilds here. So our repair station gets a pretty good workout. And even though it's we've got a few people that work there full time, a lot of the guys in the company are on the repair station roster, so we can bring in those assets as we need them.
Oh, very cool. Now, roughly, are you able to provide a rough percentage of how many of your maintenance personnel have A&P licenses as opposed to how many might not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't look that up ahead of time, but
I didn't think to ask.
Yeah, I would guess, you know, maintenance personnel is actually a small part of what we do because we're doing more manufacturing. And when I look at the manufacturing side, I would say probably, you know, 20 to 30% have their A&Ps. All of the flight line guys, the final assembly guys, those guys pretty much all have their A&Ps. Some of the QA people do, and some of the guys out in our experimental R&D shop, it's a requirement to have their A&P.
Sure.
But in other areas of the factory, it isn't. And so it's kind of nice because if you don't have that rating yet, but you know, let's say you came out of the Army or the Navy or the Air Force and you had a lot of experience in sheet metal, but you don't have your A&P. You know, we have a position where you can take that skill, you can go work on aircraft, and put that training that you've gotten to good use. And then we will work with people to take that experience and use it to build towards their A&P. So a lot of times guys will, you know, they'll come out and, hey, I spent two years working on F-16 jet engines. I've got all the power plant experience. I don't have the airplane side. And so we can give them that airframe experience that they can go and use to take their test. So, you know, we fully support, you know, building that capability up with our people and the guys getting the experience to go out and get their licenses.
Oh, that's a great idea, and it's a great program for people from the military who don't earn an AMP while they're serving. When somebody is hiring on with you without an AMP, if they're hiring on, are they hiring into a specific role, or are you hiring, say, for the hangar floor where they might do a variety of projects, or how does it work for somebody without an AMP license to come in the door for you?
Yeah, typically you're coming in for a specific role. So it's you know, it's going to be a job, you know, a sheet metal assembler or avionics tech or something like that. But once you get in that position, you know, we pretty much promote exclusively from within. You know, because what we do is so specific to our aircraft, you can't kind of bring people into a mid-level position. You have to grow your people. And so we tend to bring in people and then train them up and bring them up through. And we do really encourage cross training. So we like when people can move through the different departments and have different skills. And we will utilize that to kind of surge people back and forth as our production ebbs and flows. And so, you know, a guy might spend most of his time in gearbox assembly, but if he's a good welder and he's got experience in the weld shop, we may bring him back into the weld shop if we need, you know, for a couple of weeks or a month if we need people there. So, you know, we like those people that have experience in different areas.
Flexibility and cross training just makes a better employee across the board. So, is
Sure.
that something you try to recommend to somebody who might want to come in if they could get a broader range of experience?
Yeah, a good range of experience helps, but the most important thing is attitude. I mean, you really got to have a positive attitude, a can do attitude, be a problem solver, and you really got to stick with it. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. You know, if you drop your resume off and never call us again, you might or might not get called back. But the people that are checking in and that are really, you know, showing interest in the positions, that tells us they want to work here.
What would be an average day in the life of a mechanic working for Enstrom? I would assume the majority of the work is done inside a hangar. I know you guys have kind of cold winters there in Michigan.
Yeah, we have hot summers and cold winters and beautiful springs and falls. The average day, boy, it really depends on what you're doing. You know, the flight line guys, typically they're building up aircraft, so they're taking the aircraft out of subassembly and they're installing the engine, they're rigging the rotor system. Sometimes they're out doing flight test support, so they'll go out with, you know, they'll put the flight suit on and the helmet, go out with the pilot and help with the tracking and the tuning and troubleshooting. So those guys end up getting to fly quite a bit. You know, the QA guys, you know, they're going to be more doing the inspections. They're out on the floor, looking over the shoulders. Everything, you know, everything gets inspected, gets checked over before it goes out the door. So they're doing a lot of that. The experimental guys, that's kind of fun because it's a little more loose over there, the things you can do and can't do, and so they end up getting to do a lot of fabrication. So if you're more of you like to build stuff, you like to make stuff, a problem solver, that's a great place to be because they're always coming up with brackets and mounts and things, and they're doing a lot of instrumentation, and a lot of times they get to be involved in the flight test programs, helping to record data, set up the tests. And then we've got our tech reps, and those guys, indoors is out the door there because they're all over the world. So like I said, we're in 50 countries around the world, and our tech reps, they can be sitting at their desk fielding phone calls, or they can be on a plane to Thailand, and they can be on a plane to Thailand pretty short notice. And so that actually can be pretty fun.
Yeah, that actually brought up a really good question because I was thinking with somebody who manufactures aircraft, the majority of your employees probably live reasonably close to where your facility is. Sure. But it sounds like there is the possibility for somebody who might want to travel to eventually move into a position should one open up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got our senior tech rep has been to something like 30 different countries. He's flown a helicopter, I think, in 28 different countries. So, you know, if you want to see the world and you want to kind of travel and see some different things, it's a wonderful opportunity to do that. And we get to go to some pretty interesting and exciting places, and you meet some wonderful people. It's hard work. It's not easy. It's a lot of long days, and you're out of time zone. But boy, it's when they write the book of your life, it'll be interesting to read.
How many employees do you have at Enstrom, Dennis?
You know, we typically sit between 100 and 150. It sort of depends on where we are in production.
So you have a family. It's not a corporation, is it?
Yeah, everybody knows everybody's name, and that's one of the, I guess, the benefits of being here. One of the really neat things about working here is it really is a family. We kind of joke, we all bleed blue. When a customer comes to pick up his or her helicopter, we'll gather the whole company around and you know, do a little ceremony and so that they can all meet them. And it's a unique place to live. It's very low cost of living. We're kind of up here in the just north of Green Bay, Wisconsin. If you like hunting and fishing, you like the outdoors, it's a fantastic place to live. If you like really fine dining and sushi and Broadway musicals, this is probably not for you. Yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, Dennis. So we'll bring you back on here in just a few minutes. I'd like to turn the camera over to Rico with Sundance Helicopters. Thank you, Dennis. Rico, thank you for joining us today. Your conference room looks awfully empty with everybody still social distancing, it looks like.
Yes.
Well, let's start out. Tell us what Sundance Helicopters does.
Okay, so Sundance Helicopter, we are a helicopter tour company. We don't just do tours, we also have a charter division. With that charter division, we do things such as transports, lift jobs, natural resources jobs as well. And we're based here in McCarran, Las Vegas, Nevada, McCarran International Airport. And we were founded back in 1985. Originally, the company started out with Bell 206s. From then, they got rid of those aircraft and ended up switching over to Airbus products. So we currently have 10 EC-130 T2s and 10 AS-350 B2s.
Okay, very nice. Now, when you're hiring somebody for a maintenance role, are you looking for somebody that has experience on those airframes, or are you looking for somebody with an A&P license, or are you what do you look for when you're hiring?
So our requirement is at least you have to have an A&P license. Preferably, we require a technician that has experience on the aircraft that we have in our fleet. If not, we do look at their experience on other aircrafts. And we also like to take into account previous experience if they were in the military. That's another key factor that we look at as well. We currently have about 10 technicians that were prior military.
Very nice. What would an average day be? Now, are you hiring for specific shops or specific work, or is it how does it work for Sundance?
So for Sundance, our maintenance department is a 24-hour maintenance department. The crews are split up 12-hour shifts. You have a day shift and a night shift. Day shift starts at 4 a.m. ends at 4 p.m. The night shift starts at 4 p.m. ends at 4 a.m. It's split through the week, so you work a 3-4-4-3 schedule. The beginning of the work week always starts on Sunday for the front part of the work week and ends on Tuesday, and then the later part of the work week starts on Thursday and ends on Saturday, and then every Wednesday they will alternate. We also have, those will be our flight line mechanic positions, which pretty much 100% of the time they're out on the flight line, troubleshooting aircraft, making sure they're good to go when they take off. And then we also have our heavy duty maintenance crew, which works 410s. Their schedule is Tuesday through Friday.
Now, I would think you have the night shift because in general, your aircraft are flying all during the day on tours out to the canyon or over the strip. And then is most maintenance performed at night?
Yes, sir. 25% of the crew is day shift, and the other 75% is night shift. So you have 2 night shift crews. One would be the flight line crew, and the other one would be the heavy maintenance crew.
Man, I wouldn't have thought it would be quite that dramatic, but that's a pretty impressive split there. But that makes sense. You want to fly while I know you guys do night strip tours of the strip at night. So that makes sense that you'd only have fewer aircraft working then. So do you normally fly your aircraft right up to the edge of like inspection limits and then you bring it in for the inspections, or how does that work for your crew?
Yes, so we normally plan it out weeks in advance. We try to get a scheduled heavy maintenance in out of the 4 days that the heavy maintenance crew is in. We want to have one come in every day of their shift, of their work week that they come in. So we have a rotation to have them come in, and it normally takes about that full shift for them to complete the zone. We do have a AAIP program here at Sundance. So we actually call that crew the AAIP crew. So normally a zone 1, zone 2, and a zone 3 would be done in one shift, whereas a zone 4 would take 2 shifts to get done.
Okay. So what it sounded like, you don't hire anybody without an A&P license. If you were talking to somebody, say a room full of people with A&P licenses that wanted to come to work for you, what advice would you give them? Things that they could do to stand out in a stack of resumes?
In the stack of resumes, the first thing is to call. You always want to make sure to see if the company is still hiring, and you want to stand out to let them know that, hey, I am eager to actually start working and start my profession as a mechanic. So that would be the #1 thing, to stay consistent with actually being in touch with the company, letting them know that, hey, you are eager to learn, you're ready to start your career.
Okay. Now, again, an average day for your employees, you most always work in the hangar. Now, they're not doing refueling. You probably have separate people for refueling the aircraft when they come in for between tours?
Yes. So Signature Flight Support actually handles the fueling for us.
Okay. Is that a non-A&P role, or is that something that somebody could use to get their foot in the door?
So that is outsource for us.
Okay.
We do have for someone that's not an A&P would be a detailer position. Currently, all of our detailers are students at the local school here at AIM, Las Vegas campus. We like to hire them in. That gives us the duration while they're trying to obtain their A&P license, to see how they work, try to groom them up, as well as they get to see the insight, day-to-day operations for maintenance mechanic, to see if there's any questions they may have or anything like that.
I hadn't considered something like detailing. I would imagine detailing is probably becoming a little bit more important right now during the COVID pandemic, where cleanliness is an issue on every surface.
Yes.
Yeah. For people who do come to work for you, what kind of training do you offer throughout your organization?
So any new hire that comes in, we start out with a week worth of in-dock training, just going over the company policy, mechanics procedures manual, as well as the GOM. After that point, once we have so many new hires to where they need to have their factory training done, we will schedule that to have factory training on both the airframe and the engine as well.
Okay. So I, again, would assume, are most of your employees fairly close, living in the Vegas area?
Yes, and pretty much everyone who's in the maintenance department knows each other. We all are pretty much a team, like a family. We always help each other.
Oh, that's nice. So there's not many opportunities or not many situations where your crews would have to go away from your facility, I guess.
No, only if an aircraft is down at Grand Canyon, where we actually do our tours at, if we may need a technician to go out the following day because the aircraft's grounded out there. But besides that, all of our maintenance is done back here in Las Vegas.
Okay. So again, it offers a lot of stability for somebody who has a family.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, well, I think what I'd like to try and do is have Dennis and Ernie bring your cameras back up, and let's start with some of the questions that have come in. I see that we do have several of them that are in now. And as the questions come in, if I'll let you guys take choices on who wants to try and answer them, unless there's something specific. The first one is a two-part question. It comes from Pablo Linares. Good afternoon. Being a specialized technical training business where we do many Bell, Airbus, and Leonardo specialized training, can this type of training be offered to the Part 147s so that students not only finish their licenses for with an AMP, but also be able to have in their resume that they've been in training, for an example, of Bell 212 field maintenance? So I'm not sure who that would best be answered by. In this type of training, go ahead.
We've looked into stuff like that, going into the schools and providing type-specific training. Working. There's a couple schools near us, and we've talked about going in, with them and saying, hey, we can bring your guys up to speed on the aircraft, so when they come out, they'll be able to work on our particular aircraft. But as far as Bell or Airbus or somebody going and doing that in every school in the country, it's pretty specialized training when you get into the type specific training, and I'm not sure that that's going to be feasible for every OEM.
Okay, it says that the person who asked the question has signed an agreement with a school in Asia for their basic licensed mechanics course in their country. It takes about 8 years to become an endorsed technician. So it sounds like the United States, the AMP program is a little bit quicker, and then the training you might offer afterwards. One of the things that my previous employer, I heard that an AMP license is a license to learn. Yeah, would you folks agree with that?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So training never ends. I know that the FAA also has their FAA Diamond Awards that they issue for companies with maintenance training. Are those programs that Sundance or Enstrom or Metro take part in?
Yes, Sundance does. We're going on 3 years now of consistent.
Okay. This is for general. What does the career progression look like within the rotorcraft maintenance field? What are some of the qualities needed for longevity within the industry? Let's throw that to Ernie first. Are you okay with that one?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. The longevity in this career, I've got to be honest, I would say that, as the gentleman from Enstrom said earlier, his attitude, I would say that the very first thing for us for longevity in this career is going to be honesty and integrity. I mean, the bottom line in the aviation field in general is safety. And so you have to at all times have that integrity that at 2 o'clock in the morning, if you're called out to work on aircraft alone with nobody over your shoulder, you have to be willing to do the right thing every time, no matter what. And so for that part, that's going to be the very first thing that I would say, is that you have that honesty and integrity and ability to make the right decision, do it right the first time. The second thing I'd say is just that thirst for knowledge and constantly wanting to learn, because in this business, as we all know, airframe types change all the time. You have different variances, you have all these different things that are going to creep up and come in, and everybody's going to want the newest and greatest toy. And so you're going to need to learn that and be able to do it sufficiently to keep that aircraft operable and keep the crew safe.
Well, maybe one of you can also talk about the progression element of that question. If somebody came in the door as an entry-level AMP mechanic, what might be their progression? Would they move into a shop lead or a shop chief, and then move into a departments level? So what might that look like for some of you, your companies?
So in Metro, I'll just jump back in there since I left out on that part. So in Metro, I mean, you can come in a Part 135 field-based position, and you can work your way into be the base lead mechanic. And then over a period of time, if you continue to progress, you can become what we call a program lead technician. And so from the program lead technician area, you work in that for a number of years and develop your skills. You always have the opportunity to become what we call a regional maintenance manager. We have those. And so once you go from there, you can work your way right up to being the actual DOM.
Okay. Rico, maybe you can talk about your career progression. How did you become, what progression did you take to become the DOM there at Sundance?
So initially, about 8 years ago, I hired on as an AMT with Sundance. Performed that role for about 2 years. 2 years later, a lead position came about. I applied for that position. I stayed in that role for 2 years. And then a maintenance manager position came about, and I took that position, held that position for about 3.5 years. And then the used to be DOM ended up taking a job over at Blue Hawaiian, which is our sister company. And then I applied for this position, and I've had this position now going on a little bit over 1.5 years.
Without prying too much, what do you think, what attributes do you think that the company saw in you that made them realize that you were the right person for those roles as you progressed?
I would say my attitude, as well as my eagerness to always learn, always take on new tasks, always willing to help others.
Okay, Dennis, I'd like to ask you about the same progression, because it sounds like a small company that does so many things. What kind of progression opportunities would be with Enstrom?
Yeah, you know, typically people are going to come in, if they're coming in without an AMP, generally they're probably going to be working in the back shops or subassembly, but they'll work up through final assembly, and then get into flight test, and we look for people there that really have an aptitude for it, and can understand some of the tracking and the tuning and the troubleshooting. And then a lot of times we'll rotate them through the repair station to get them some more familiarity with sort of field aircraft, not because a lot of stuff we build is brand new and it's really shiny and it's not dirty yet. So they got to teach them how to work on dirty stuff, and then get them used to working with the customers a little bit. And then oftentimes we'll move them into a tech rep role, you know, and that point, that's kind of where they move into the office. They're out of the shop and they're more on the phone and on the computer. And then if the tech rep wants to travel, typically if they're not a pilot, we'll train them to be a pilot. So all of our traveling tech reps are pilots.
Very
we
cool.
want them to be able to do return to service flights, and quite frankly, in some of the places we go, you know, doing a return to service or a maintenance test flight is a specific skill, and some of the pilots don't always have that. So we ship a pilot that does, and so we'll bring the guys through. And if and to be honest, our current director of product support, you know, he was a tech rep for many years, and moved into director of QA, and now he's director of product support. So you can go all the way up to one of the directors of the company.
Oh, very cool. And actually, since we finished with you, I actually got a question that is specifically for you. Are there engineering assistant opportunities for mechanics who may be interested in learning more about that role and the engineering processes?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as mechanics, how many times have we sworn, you know, at what bleeping engineer designed this? You know, you can't stick your hand upside down and around and get that screw on there. Well, here, when you find that screw that you can't reach, you can go upstairs and talk to the guy and say, you know, what were you thinking? And you can put in a drawing change request, and hopefully it gets fixed. And so certainly our mechanics are down on the floor all the time. Our engineers are down on the floor all the time, and they're constantly working with the guys in the shop, the guys on the floor, and vice versa. And some of the guys have gone on and moved upstairs into engineering. Usually the avionics guys, our best avionics engineers were technicians, because they have an understanding of the systems of the aircraft. They have an understanding of how those systems go in, and they're out there every day, especially with the more modern integrated systems that require so much programming. You know, they're out there every day using those systems, and so they make a very good transition up into engineering.
Okay, this would be a question for all three of you. In light of the current situation, are we still having difficulty finding qualified maintenance technicians?
I've got
Let's
to be
start with,
honest.
go
Speaking
ahead.
for Metro, I'm sorry. Speaking for Metro, I've got to be honest. We've been extremely fortunate. I know that there's the projection of the shortage of technicians that is still on the roll. We've been fortunate that we have not had that issue, and I believe that COVID, of course, probably played a big portion of that. And honestly, as I'm sitting here talking to you today, yesterday actually was the first time, and I actually don't know if it's happened in the history of the company, that we actually have no positions available across the country for any of our Part 135 technician positions. And at this very moment, here in our headquarters in our Part 145 repair station, with well over 120 bases and about over 1,000 different pilots and all those things, we have absolutely no technician positions available at the moment. So it's kind of a rarity that I never expected to see.
Well, that actually tells me two things, Ernie. Number one, you're not experiencing the same issues that some companies might be having, but by saying that right now there are no open positions for the first time in the history of the company, it implies that there normally are open positions here and there, so that if somebody is looking, they should continue to visit your website.
Absolutely. I mean, those things are just fluid. It was just a fluke that we looked at it and realized where we were at. And we actually had to we actually had to go through it 2 or 3 times. And so that was one of those things. But I always tell people all the time that, you know, when we do this, I always have to make sure that folks understand that this is extremely fluid. And at any given time, we can have a need for a great number of folks all at once.
Rico, Dennis, have you guys had any experience with the shortage?
I wouldn't say necessarily, you know, due to COVID, but for us being in a small town, you know, we're not in like Dallas, Fort Worth, where there's this huge aerospace industry, or Stratford or something like that. So, you know, we don't have this sort of pool of people around that we can go poach from different companies. And so, you know, for us, when we're trying to grow and we're trying to expand, we have to go to a much larger region to recruit people, and that can be a little challenging at times. And you know, I kind of touched on where we live before. You know, to be honest, I'm not going to go to Miami and get guys to move up here. They're probably not going to like the lifestyle, or the weather. And so that is a little bit of a challenge in recruiting for us. And so we have our best luck when we pull people that are from the area. A lot of military people returning. About 30% of our workforce is prior military. So you know, that's where we have our best success.
Okay, Rico, any thoughts on this subject?
Yes, for us, it's always been a challenge. Not as much as it used to be now with having the aviation school here and with us having the resource of using them as well to, as far as coming in as a detailer. So once we prune them up, and as well as once they get their NP, we can bring them in if we have any technicians that may leave during that duration once they actually obtain their license.
Okay, I've got a question again for, I guess this would be open for all three of you. What are opportunities, or do you have opportunities for international employees? Can people from different countries come to work for any of your programs?
I'll take that one. We do employ some foreign tech reps. So we do have some tech reps that are not based at the factory, and you know, again, those people are hard to find with the airframe specific experience. That being said, bringing in international employees to the factory is a little bit difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible. We've done it before, but it does limit some of the roles in what we do, because some of what we do is export controlled.
Okay, Ernie, Rico, any thoughts on that one?
So here at Metro, we do not, at this point in time, we do not hire individuals internationally.
Okay. I guess I think Ernie talked about it, and I know I think Rico talked about it. How long is the internal corporate training before a new employee starts turning wrenches? Rico, do you want to start on that one?
For Sundance, it takes a week before they actually are sent out on the floor and they work alongside with a technician that has so many years experience.
Okay, Ernie?
Yep, for Metro, I'll be in agreement with Rico there. We have a week-long 5 to 6 day basic indoctrination, and then that's for the folks that go out to the field. And when they get out to the field, they're always assigned and work under an experienced mechanic for a period of time before they're on their own.
Okay, Dennis, what about for a manufacturer like Enstrom?
You know, generally we're going to get the guys out there pretty quick. Usually within a few days, they're out working on stuff, but always under very heavy supervision. And we figure it takes about 9 months to get someone up to speed on in a specific area, to where they can do that repeatedly and up to our quality standards. But you know, there's 3,000 some parts on the helicopter, and we make most of them, and so it can actually take someone years to, you know, before they cycle through all the parts in a specific area to where they're, you know, sort of fluent on every part that their department has to build.
I'm not sure about the certification here, but got a question. Do you require a certification of the Dirty Dozen as provided by the FAA? Rico, do you want to start with that one?
No, we don't require that. That is a part of the Diamond Award training that we do every year. Every mechanic does that course. So that is a part of it, but it's not a requirement.
Okay. Ernie?
We do not.
Okay. And Dennis, how about you? Okay.
No, neither do we.
Are there any maintenance technicians with any of your companies that have mechanical or aerospace engineering backgrounds? Dennis, I would think your Enstrom probably does.
Yeah, I would say more of our engineers have maintenance technician backgrounds. It's probably the other way around, but especially when you get out into the experimental department, it's a small department and it's very hands-on, and you kind of need to be a jack of all trades out there.
Okay. Rico or Ernie, any people with engineering backgrounds with your organizations, aerospace engineering?
We do have an on-site engineer, and we do have some other folks here at the Part 145 repair station that do have engineering backgrounds because they work in that department. Some folks will train up to that because we do get a lot of the FAA STCs, because as with Enstrom, with part of our completion, we actually create parts that have never been made for helicopters before. So we do have a number of people in the engineering department, but not necessarily as AMPs.
Okay. This one's interesting. What skill set or discipline do you think will be most important to your company in the immediate future? Avionics, sheet metal, composites, field tech? Let's start with Dennis on that one. I haven't started with you in a minute.
Well, they're all important because the helicopter doesn't fly without any of them. So it's difficult to say which is the most important. I will say that sheet metal people are hard to find. You know, machinists, you know, machinists, there's a lot of companies that use machinists, and that's a pretty broad discipline. But aviation sheet metal is a very unique discipline. And avionics is something that is just changing so quickly. It's changing so fast. And people that can just sort of keep up with that technology, you know, that's one where you really gotta have be in the mindset of continuous learning.
Ernie or Rico?
I would have to agree with Dennis that I believe avionics would be the number one. That would be the top skill, and then sheet metal right behind that, more than likely. Beyond those two, I think those are the two most highly demanded and changing at this point in time.
Okay. This is a question for all. It's from Gene Munson, who is an advisor with the HAI Safety Working Group. Do any of your organizations use mechanical or electrical aptitude tests similar to the what the military uses for potential non-A&P and entry-level A&P for their strongest talents? So somebody might want to come in, but they're not sure which area. I'm hearing silence, so I'm guessing that there's not much use of those aptitude tests.
No, we do not. I was actually just, it seems as though I tend to chime in quickly, and I was trying to not do that. But no, we do not use those as a general rule. The folks, when we have positions available, they know what their original skill set is, or at least they have an idea of what field they want to go into. And so those are the ones they apply for. Now, if we bring them in, as we talked about earlier, if we bring them into an entry-level position, say in the NVG shop, but we figure that they have an aptitude more geared towards mechanical engines, then we're going to try them in the engine shop, and eventually we're going to put them through that by, I hate to say it, but we do it more by trial by fire than by an exam.
Okay.
I know that we do in some areas. I don't know in all the areas. For example, in the weld shop, we do make the guys take a welding test, and we do pass on a lot of welders. They may be good, but they're not quite good enough.
Okay. We're running out of time, so I'm going to ask one final question. We do have some other questions that I might try to forward on to you if any of you feel like you have the time to answer them individually. We'll see how that goes. But the final question is, what is the single most important message that you want our viewers to take away from today's webinar? And we'll start with Rico.
Once you obtain your A&P license, put your resume out there. If you're entry-level AMT, don't be picky on your first job. You want to try to get any opportunity you can to get your foot in the door. Once you do get your foot in the door, you want to make sure you stay at that place for a couple of years. One of the things that we look at over at Sundance pertaining to the resumes are people that have been to multiple locations, multiple jobs, and they've only been there for a short period of time. Would have been a year here and a year there. We look for that consistency. Someone that's been there for multiple years to let us know that if we do hire you on, that we know that you're going to be here for a while. You're not going to be here just for a year, and we invest in you, and then you up and leave in a year's time.
Okay, Dennis.
To me, the A&P is really like the golden ticket. You can just do so much with it, and you can go in so many directions. And if you want to turn wrenches, you can turn wrenches. If you want to do quality, you can get into that. If you want to move, work towards management or travel, whatever it is. And if you want to be a pilot, being a pilot's great. I'm a pilot, it's fun, but you're you fly. That's what you do. As an A&P, the world is really big, and if you're kind of out there going, boy, I don't know if that's really for me, or I'm kind of interested in aerospace, but I don't know exactly what. You could do a lot worse than starting with your A&P.
Okay, Ernie, let's finish up with you.
All right, sir. I'm going to reiterate a lot of what both Rico and Dennis just said. My strongest advice, and I'm not sure if there's any military folks watching this or if they will. If they do, I will say that one of the biggest things I can say to you is that from all the events I've gone to in the time that I've been in the recruiter's chair is that the military individuals in particular do not understand how important that A&P is. And another factor that most of them are unaware of, excuse me, is that the military, at least the Army, in several ways will help you get that while you're in. And the A&P is invaluable, as Dennis said, it'll open up an entire world to you. The other thing I'm going to say that I hope that everybody gets out of this by the end of this day is that this is an extremely interesting, rewarding, and vital career field. And there are always going to be opportunities for you in so many various industries that aviation branches out into. I would always just say my biggest thing I want you to get is that the jobs are going to be there. It may not always be easy to get your foot in the door. Don't ever give up. Never give up. Keep learning, keep trying, stay up on the current issues, and just go out there and do the best job you can. And I promise you that one of us at some point in time will have the opportunity and the honor to get to meet you and offer you a position.
Gentlemen, I really appreciate the time you gave us today and leading up to this webinar. I think the information you provided is invaluable to somebody who's been working their way into the industry. And so I'm grateful for the time you were able to dedicate to our future generations and to some of the people who might already be in the field and looking to make a transition. So Rico, Dennis, Ernie, I really appreciate the time you spent with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for putting this together.
We've got a little bit of housekeeping to finish up with. As always, we have a follow-up questionnaire that will be coming out via email very shortly. We do ask that you take a few minutes to fill out the questionnaire. Questionnaires like that is exactly why we had this webinar today. You asked for it, we provided it. There's going to be more information you might want on something else. Let us know what it is. Save the date for next week. We are actually having an international rotorcraft industry update. We have representatives from several international helicopter associations from around the world who will join Jim for some individual discussions and then a roundtable discussing how the industry is doing right now. What do things look like as a result of the pandemic, and then just as the industry in general? That should be a stimulating discussion. And finally, as always, please tell us what we're doing right. Please tell us what we're doing wrong. HII is here to serve our members, to serve the industry. We want to do what is necessary to make things work right. Quickest way to do that is to send Jim Viola an email at president@rotor.org. He makes sure that the right staff members see these emails, and we do appreciate your input. Until next week, I ask that you fly safe, that you stay safe, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much.